I stood in the water and I just kind of stood there and had some time to think about life, how, precious and fleeting it is, and that it's all on a time constraint. We don't have unlimited time.
And my first real experience catching trout on a fly rod was roll casting worms. It's okay, let's go see if we can catch them on a fly. Sure. And then that desire to want to catch them on a fly versus spinning gear and really started to kind of sink in.
It's not really about the fishing, it's about the entertaining. I gave them a woods experience. And from there you can branch out to the fishing, the walking, and the enjoyment. And you have to be very versatile.
Welcome to the Flyline Podcast, where we enjoy the interesting stories behind the legendary guides and luminaries connected to Maine fishing. I'm Michael Jones. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, Bill Green. Bill Green is a beloved figure in Maine broadcasting, known for his over 4 decades-long career sharing the people, places, and traditions that make this state so special. From his early days growing up in Maine to becoming one of the most trusted voices on television, Bill has spent his life celebrating Maine's outdoor spirit through storytelling and through his iconic show, Bill Green's Maine. In this episode, Bill talks about his childhood, his family background, and his evolution into broadcasting. He shares memorable experiences from the field and reflects on the challenges and joys of covering Maine's culture with humor, curiosity, and a genuine heart. We also dig into the motivation and work ethic that fueled his long career, the people who shaped his journey, and the positive impact he always hoped to make through his work. And as he has done for so many years, Bill ends our episode with his signature message to kids, so stay tuned. In the small pond that we call the Maine outdoors, Bill Green is a big fish. Bill Green, welcome to the Flyline Podcast.
Michael, I'm delighted to be here and honored at the award of being the worst fisherman to ever be on this podcast.
Oh, that's not true.
How about that?
You've been between the gunnels on my boat, and you are not the worst flycaster or fisherman to be.
Mediocre at best.
Well, I appreciate your modesty. Bill, I do want to just start by thanking you for being here and also reflecting on, I've grown up in Maine my entire life. I'm going to be 56 in December, and we watched the evening news every night while we were getting dinner ready or eating dinner.
Yep.
And your presence was in my living room and in our kitchen for all my formidable years.
Yep.
And it was like having you figuratively at the kitchen table with us every night with your comrades like Joe Cupo and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so my father would be over the moon to know that I'm sitting here with you today in Gray, Maine, having a man-to-man conversation about our mutual passion for the outdoors.
How is Dad?
He's not with us
I'm
anymore.
so sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
I tried to be conversational. I tried to be in the room with people. I tried to connect with the audience. So what you just said is a very nice compliment.
Yeah, it always, and I'm going to go back to that because you have a natural ability to connect with people. And I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. I always like to dig back because a lot of people who know you and those who don't know you from what they see on television. But let's go back to before you were on television. You came from humble beginnings.
Yeah, my dad was a railroad brakeman. My mother immigrated from England. She was from Haworth, England, the town where the Bronte sisters were from. I don't think they knew the Brontes, but anyway, my grandfather was a coal miner who fought for England in World War I and had a little Hitler mustache, which he shaved in the 1930s when Hitler came to power. So the first mustache of my family was a little, whatever those are called. And I have a picture of my uncle looking kind of like Hitler in 1932, when not many people knew, and he shaved it because, England. And so anyway, she immigrated to Cincinnati at age 10, became a devoted American, passionate American.
This is your mother.
My mother.
Right.
She joined the Women's Auxiliary Corps in World War II, which became the Women's Army Corps. And she met my father, who was an Orono guy, coming through Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana.
Through the military.
Yeah, and after the war, they came back here to Maine.
And settled in Bangor.
Yeah, and my dad was the best storyteller in the family. And I think of myself as a bullshit artist. I can sling it, but my dad was the best storyteller I've ever met. And he had I want to tell you about his World War II history.
Do it.
He meets my mom. He's going to Washington State because they're going to send him to the Pacific. And they change their minds. So they take him from like camp Fort Lewis, Washington, on a train back across to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, comes home, visits his family, and then goes to Europe. He goes across Omaha Beach, D-Day plus 6 weeks. Nobody shooting, right? But he's getting scared because they're starting to catch up to Patton's army now. They're like 50 miles behind the front lines. They pull him out of the line. They send him down through the Riviera, where the women are sunbathing topless, right? And he gets on a ship, and overnight, he wakes up the next morning. He doesn't know what it is, but he recognized the Rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And then off he goes through the Panama Canal. He shaved his head and then he goes to Okinawa.
Oh,
We have a Christmas card, Merry Christmas from Okinawa. But now it's getting serious. He's part of the invasion of Japan. We're going to lose 500,000 men. He knows he's going to be one of them. And one day they dropped the atomic bomb. They announced it. They didn't know that he got as far as sergeant, but he didn't know what it was. But, it destroyed an entire Japanese city. He and his buddies were ecstatic. They're doing cartwheels down the beach, and then 3 days later, we dropped another one. This is Nagasaki now. And my father said, good, give it to him. My father looked like Archie Bunker. He's a very conservative guy. He was an FDR Democrat, a union man on the B&A Railroad, but a real Maine. A lot of guys like my dad like to play golf, like railroad men. We had a little camp down at Jagabuck Pond, catching trash fish, and a great guy and a great storyteller. He kind of looked at life as something we all try really hard at, but there's a lot of humor in what we're doing because it's not going perfectly for all of us.
No.
And so so that's my roots. We're a family of 5 kids.
And you were
4.
You were number 4.
Yeah.
What did your brothers and sisters do?
Yeah, the older one was kind of the hero of the family. Tommy was a ROTC guy at Maine, and he went to Vietnam, was wounded in Vietnam early in his second tour as a young officer over there, armored cavalry officer, just like William Calley. And he had a sensational career in the Army. He ended up a colonel. He was in Germany a long time. He did Operation Desert Storm as a spare brigade commander. So they had like 6 brigades or something. And if any of the brigade commanders got killed, Tom Green was going to take over one of those brigades. The problem was that none of the brigade commanders expected to get killed. So he'd go around meeting guys and good, Green, go stand in the corner. But he did command the aviation brigade of the 82nd Airborne. And he flew everything that was in the Army at one time. Quite a guy. And I'm very proud of him. That's why I'm bragging about him on your radio podcast. My next not radio podcast, is it? Am I showing how old I am?
Yeah.
About your podcast. And then I had a brother named James Frederick. We call him Fred as a kid, became Jim as an adult. And he was a firefighter in Bangor, paramedic kind of guy. He flew helicopters for the 112th.
Wow.
And, did some other stuff in the Guard. He got activated for Desert Storm, but went to Germany to replace some unit over there that went down into Desert Storm. But a great fellow, and he passed away at age 69. My sister Julie was a college administrator. Her wife, who was president of Eastern Maine Community College, just passed away. And I share that with you because you can see it's kind of an interesting family. And my little sister Marsh is a lawyer, and she married. She went to Maine, sorority girl, married a football player. They went to his town of Worcester and raised a family down there. Yeah. So 5 kids, we all did, I think, pretty well. And we're all Mainers, and there you go.
Yeah, no,
That's Bill Green.
Diversified family for sure.
Yep.
You went to the University of Maine?
I did. We all did.
Yeah.
And at one point, because I got well-known in Maine, they put up pictures of well-known alums. And my picture is a picture of me, and it said, UMaine was there for me. It's the difference between a wonderful career and who knows what. And I feel very grateful to the university because they had, Maine is the place you got to, like home. When you got to go there, they got to take you. And, having a college degree is how I got on the air. The station manager was a Harvard graduate, an old fellow named Ed Guernsey, whose uncle was Hunter Thompson, who some people credit with inventing television, but a very early television pioneer, if anybody wants to read about an interesting word. And he appreciated that I was working full-time and going to night school, and that I switched and was working full-time and going to traditional college. I went 2.5 years at night and then 2.5 years during the day.
What were you studying?
Broadcasting.
You were?
Yeah, I got, I got a job as a studio cameraman at Channel 2 when I was 18. And I'm working with a local legend, a vaudeville type guy named Eddie Driscoll. And, Eddie was, one time we went to the Lakewood Theater in Skowhegan, Milton Berle was there. And Eddie wanted to meet Milton Berle, the king of television from the 1950s.
Yeah.
And they're doing a little repartee. And I thought Eddie was funnier than Milton Berle.
Yeah.
But, small market guy. Those of us who grew up in Bangor, Eastern Maine, Northern Maine, we love Eddie Driscoll.
Tell me about what you guys were producing for television shows, because they were unique.
You bet. And they were live. And
Dialing for Dollars?
yeah, 8:30 in the morning, we did, let me think for a second. 9 o'clock in the morning, we did My Backyard. So I guess, I don't know what was on 8 to 9. I think the Today Show. But Eddie would come out and he would do puppets. He would do origami. He would do, draw pictures for kids.
Okay.
He had a puppet named Mason Mudd. Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yep.
Mason would come out
I love
and he flipped the puppet upside down. The ears would hang down. And I mean, Eddie just said some of the funniest things that I've ever heard live, and then we'd run 3 cartoons. He'd close the show and walk across the studio and do a half hour of Dialing for Dollars. And he'd sing songs and read about bean suppers. And I think with where TV is going, with the networks going over the top, I can explain that if you'd like to hear about it, because listeners might find it interesting. That show, if you could get somebody half as talented as Eddie, would work today. An hour of live TV. Let me explain going over the top. Right now, I have YouTube TV, so I go to NBC Channel 6, and the local news comes on in the morning from 4:30 to 7. Then the Today Show's at 7 and 9. Within 5 years, the network's going to go straight to YouTube. They're going to go straight to Fubo. I can't name them. Straight to Hulu.
Right. Yeah.
So Channel 2 and NBC will be parallel. Channel 2 and 6 will be parallel. Your local affiliates. And that's why you see them doing things like, I don't know, it's called Cup of Joe. Go to our app. We're going to be on for 2 more hours. Right. They're preparing to go 24 hours a day.
Right.
And they're going to be up against what is right now their own network.
What's your feeling about that?
Times change, but I wouldn't want to be working in local TV because it's expensive to produce 24 hours of programming.
Right.
And, do you think your local news repeats too many stories? Well, wait till, they start at 4:30 in the morning, they go to 7. There's one person in the field, maybe a photographer or 2.
Right.
3 or 4 anchors, couple producers.
Yeah.
What are they going to do from, 7 to noon?
Right.
When there's not much new on the new.
Well,
so
I think
it's a good spot for you because you can get on their show and talk about fishing.
Yes. Well, thank you that's a good observation. But I think what it was when I was a kid was you had to be tuning in at 6 o'clock because that's when news started. Now, if I come in from doing yard work at 4:30, we've got News Center. Mm-hmm. It goes on, you can watch until 6:30 at night. You get the same thing every half an hour, right?
I have unlimited DVR. So I just record the shows. I can work in the yard as well. Late as I want, come in, start the news at 6 and skip the commercials.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a different world. When we beat Channel 13 in the ratings in 1986, May of 1986, the month I got married, we beat them 24 to 22, which means 46% of the people were watching the 6 o'clock news on one of those stations. And I bet Channel 8 got at least 4.
Right.
So half the people were home at 6 o'clock watching the news live.
Yeah.
Think of that. And now, big news ratings, 5 or 6.
Right.
20% of what it once was.
Well, my family was part of the 46.
There you go.
With you and your team.
Sure.
And it came down to a number of factors, and it's still true today. Where do you get the most accurate forecast, and where do you get the most entertaining news stories from?
Interestingly enough, and your out-of-state viewers must be rolling their eyes, but this is happening across the country, so it's pertinent. We do weather. Channel 6, I noticed, I'm retired, does weather 3 times a half hour. And let's say, well, there's a fire somewhere, but before we do that, let's go to Ryan Breton now as I replaced Keith Carson with Ryan with the forecast. And we're in a drought, people.
Yeah.
It hasn't rained in 6 weeks. It's not gonna for 2 more weeks. I don't need, but so we do that. It's going to be 80 and sunny for the next 9 days.
Yeah.
All right, back to you.
Yeah.
And then they go to the fire.
Yeah.
Because weather is so important. Then they come back and they do another forecast, and then they wrap it up with a forecast. So, and we don't do sports. We don't have a sportscaster.
Right.
So times are changing.
Bill, I'm going to need to ask you to step it up a little bit. I'm not getting enough out of you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No,
I'm kind of interested in this topic.
You ran away from me there in a great way because every story is so good and I'm hanging on every word. But let's back up. because there was a point where you were working on the set and behind the camera.
Oh, geez.
And now all of a sudden, that dream of becoming a broadcaster. Tell me about your
Oh,
first.
exactly.
Go ahead.
Well, the first day, this is the zoom, don't touch that. This is the focus, don't touch that. They'd focus the camera for me. And Eddie comes out of a break, and he's going to reach into the barrel and pull out a slip on Dialing for Dollars. And you pan over to show the slip, but then you pan back because the amount is on the screen, right? The amount of money. And if you know the daily count, which might be 3 from the top, and the amount's on the screen, $15, and Eddie calls you and you know that, you get the $15, right? And I was so nervous I couldn't pan the camera. Eddie leaned over to the barrel to pull a slip from the phone book out, and I couldn't move the camera. I was too nervous. The tally light came on. I mean, geez. Now within a few weeks, I'm singing backup for him when he's doing Ghost Riders in the Sky live. But no, I loved it from day one. He was so talented. And, so I now switched my major, and I'm studying world broadcast history, and I'm learning from Eddie. I'm sweeping the studio, so I'm getting the micro and the macro, and it was an exciting place to be. And the first year I was there, Margaret Chase Smith was running for the Senate and lost. She was a 5-term senator, I believe, or 4. She had won 4. She lost in her 5th run to William D. Hathaway. Ed Muskie was still running for president, and he had run for vice president in 1968. He was the favorite to win the Democratic nomination in 1972. Some dirty tricks, some other things, and he was beaten. But Ed Muskie was in the studio several times. I knew Ed, and he didn't like me very much. I was kind of this pissant little kid that was always humping his leg. Hi, Senator Muskie, would you like a donut? But Sandy Koufax lived in East Holden at the time.
The baseball player for the audience, yeah.
And he was doing analysis for NBC. So he would cut his promo during the week at Channel 2.
Yeah.
So I'd see Sandy all the time. And that was exciting to me. An 18-year-old kid from Bangor, whose dad was a railroad brakeman, to meet Sandy Koufax, to meet Ed Muskie, to meet Tex Harrison of the Globetrotters. May I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So Ed's going to have a press conference, and he only wants to have one. So all the media and wherever is going to come to Channel 2.
Classic conference.
Yeah. So we've got, 60 seats. Maybe 25 or 30 were filled. And Tex Harrison of the Globetrotters is coming to do a preview. They're going to play the Bangor Auditorium, and, he's going to spin a basketball and invite people down. And we're trying to fill newscasts. So, they said, take Tex down to the conference room and have him do his thing and blah, blah, blah. So he does it, 3 times a day somewhere. You didn't have to do anything but turn the camera on for Tex Harrison, who just died. He coached the Washington Generals. Interesting fellow. He played basketball in front of 4 kings, And so we do this stick. Fine, it's going to be fine. And I'm walking him down the hall. We get to the foyer of the building just as Ed Muskie walks in. And I'm 18 and a half. I'm thinking these 2 great Americans have to meet. I go, Tex, I'd like you to meet. And I didn't say Senator Ed Muskie. I didn't, I was trying to do a formal introduction. Tex, this is Ed Muskie. Ed, this is Tex Harrison. Like, obviously they know who each other is. They didn't, and Tex looks at Ed Muskie and says, Ed, you're pretty tall. Did you play basketball?
Yeah.
So it was just mistake after mistake after mistake. But gosh, I was having fun.
I was just on that same thing. I was watching a little commentary with Angus King, and he was talking about how he was sitting in a restaurant in Kingfield, and the waitress walked up and said, Mr. Green, can I get a photo with you? So you guys, this mistaken identity, it goes on.
Angus has gotten a lot of mileage out of it. I like Angus King very much, and I'm honored that he does it. George Mitchell had something similar. If he was at a sporting event, he'd say, gee, it's great to see Bill Green here because till Bill got here, I was the worst athlete in the room. But that's flattering.
Yeah.
They even know your name and,
So, Bill, back to, getting into sports, were you an athlete or were you more of a sports fan?
I was a mediocre athlete, 5'10", 165, couldn't run. Outstanding baseball player. And I could have played Division III baseball, no question. But, we didn't have any money. I mean, my father said, and bless his heart, I don't have any money for you to go to college. Don't expect it. So I had to figure out a way to get there. But my guidance counselor thought I should go to a vocational school and be a mechanic. Yeah. I can't fix anything.
Right.
To this day. It's pitiful. Right. So I just went up, signed up for continuing education, and I needed to get 30 hours with a C average. And after 2.5 years, I had 36 hours with like 2.05. I just barely. I really think I graduated. I went and got my transcript a few years ago, and I was embarrassed for my kids to see it. But I graduated from college with a 2.19.
Yeah.
You can't do worse than that.
But you probably came away with inspiration as to what you wanted, like something along that way. Either the work you were doing when you weren't at school,
Yeah.
made
yeah.
you say, "Okay, this is what I want to do."
Oh, yeah.
And
As soon as I could declare a major, I declared broadcasting, which was technically speech with a concentration in broadcasting. And I like to call it my second senior year, but it was my first senior year. I had 2 freshman years, maybe 3, and I was already on the air. So we're all walking around there in purple double knits with dingo boots and hair down over our ears. And then the next year I come back, I'm wearing 3-piece suits to class.
Right.
Because I was the sportscaster at Channel 2 in Bangor. And if you think I'm wild now, geez,
yeah.
people tell stories about stuff they saw me do. And
Was it challenging for you right out of the chute? Was it a natural fit for you to do that, or was it something you had to really work at? Because you clearly had evolved into you being very natural.
I think I was, I was raw. I had no real honed skills, but I was slinging it every night. And I can, for the golfers out there, my dad took up golf as an older man. He'd caddied as a boy at the country club, and we played Bangor Mini. And my dad was a club champion at a couple places. And I shot 73 on June 29th, 1975. I got on the air the next day and didn't play again all summer. Right? I mean, I was hitting it pretty good. I had a 5 handicap. I'm playing golf in the low 70s and love the game. And man, I'm a sportscaster. And they're saying, look, you can't come to work now because we don't have any money for overtime, for example. And I'd say, fine. And I'd fill out my time card, 48 hours.
Yeah.
I think it was 48.
And get paid for 40.
Get paid. I think when I became a sportscaster, I got 40. I was a studio cameraman when I started, and I worked 9 to 6:30, 4 days, and Friday they had a guy come in. So I worked 48 hours Monday through Friday for 3.5 years. And then when I became a sportscaster, oh my gosh.
So initially you weren't a sportscaster.
I was a studio cameraman, a minimum wage job, working with Eddie.
So we've got studio cameraman and then dipping your toe into sportscasting.
No, I was sports director. They had one guy.
Okay. Yeah.
I was the department. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So did you start doing features in Bangor, or was that only after you?
Yeah, and another big influence was Bud Levitt.
Well, I want to ask you about that.
Bud Levitt was, my father knew Bud because everybody knew Bud. And somebody said something to Bud one time, according to Bud's story. And the guy said, I got 2 chances of getting my name in the paper, your column and my obituary. And that really stuck with me. It stuck with Bud too. But he'd mention local guys, and he'd be up to camp with Bendy McElbow, which meant they were drinking up there. And a couple times he threw my father's name in there, and it was a big deal. My father got his name in the paper and knows Bud Levitt, and Bud did that with everybody. But
Bill, just for clarification, I know who Bud Levitt is. Who was Bud Levitt?
Bud Levitt was an outdoor writer for the Bangor Daily News. And he started as a lowly whatever he started as, and a great writer.
Yeah.
And his beat became outdoors, the Red Sox, and skiing. What kind of a beat is that? But he just did what he wanted to do and wrote about it.
Right.
And he wrote wonderful stories. One of his daughters, he had 2 daughters. I think it's Lisa and Liz. They're still in state. Had a child that was premature, and he was at Maine Med or someplace with his child. And he wrote a story about that baby being born that makes me cry to think about. He's ordering that baby to live.
Right.
And, this is on the sports page in an outdoor column. Bud, what are you doing? And it's great. I mean, he just had us in his hands. And of course, his big thing was he loved to fish. He'd love to go places and fish. And he was a personal friend of Ted Williams. And he was. And Ted would come and stay at his house, or they'd go places and fish. When Ted Williams never tipped his cap to the fans, and they had that Ted Williams Day at Fenway. I don't know. I guess they retired his number. Bud sat next to him, was one of 5 people who spoke. And when Ted came up to the mic and said, I tip my hat to the fans of Boston. He didn't feel he got a good deal from the media. And he walked over and handed the hat to Bud. And the Levitt family has that hat. I'd love to know where that hat ends up because that's a wonderful thing. But Bud wrote stories about Benny McElbow. He wrote stories about, McGalloway. The Miramichi and
Right.
all the great fishermen and sometimes the not so great fishermen. There was a group of New York Yankees who came hunting up to Milo, and somebody built a lodge, and the Yankees were paying for the wood and stuff, and the local guys were building the place out. And so some, pretty impressive guys were up there hunting, and their names I don't remember, but one guy was the batting champ. His name was like, Snuffy Steinweiss or something, and before my time. But Bud was up there covering them, and then one of those guys, one of the Yankees, shot a kid in a hunting accident. And it seems brutal. I mean, brutal. It seems you'd go to jail today, but the kid was sawing wood, and the guy walked and heard a sound in the woods, and shot the kid, shot him twice, shot him in the hand.
Right.
And he raised his hand up and shot him in the chest and killed him. And Bud covered that story, and he covered it. I mean, he didn't give him a break. Here are the facts.
I think that Bud, in just doing some of my research before today, it seems like Bud taught you that if you write about the outdoors, Bill, you will have an unlimited well to draw from.
Well, Bud taught me two things. One, he said the big time sports in Maine is in the outdoors. It's the hunting and fishing. It's sailing the deep blue water. I can't remember how I said the Appalachian Trail, the Allegheny Wilderness Waterway. And that's true. The big time opportunities, people come from all over the world to do outdoor things, to fish and hunt in Maine. The other thing that I think he taught me was that outdoor sports, recreational sports is more what I did, but outdoor sports was contained in it. It belongs in sports.
Yes.
See, so I stole that from Bud. It wasn't, now there's a separate section outdoors, and it's all hiking, right? But you'd read about the Red Sox here, and next to it was Bud up to hunting camp with Benny McElbow.
Right.
And it would make you laugh or sometimes cry.
Well, and that's what you really hung your hat on for Bill Green's Maine.
It's modeled after Bud's show.
It was everything.
The feel of my show tried to be what we saw on the Bud Levitt show Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
So
Bud Levitt had a Saturday night show.
Oh, yeah.
Much like you had a Saturday night show.
That's right. And his theme song was better than mine. His theme song was The Happy Wanderer.
So I have a question for you, Bill. So when you were doing sports announcing and you were doing anchor work, and now you're doing features, I think of when I'm watching someone in front of a camera in a studio, maybe reading a teleprompter or knowing they've got a 15-second bite, what I'm always impressed with is when you are doing your features, you walk in front of that camera. I've seen you do it live. And you'll oftentimes do it in one take.
Well, my secret, I often did it in 5 too, but my secret there that I'll pass on to your viewers, because everybody...
And me, I want to know how to do this.
Treat the camera as a friend. Who's the person that you really trust? Who's the guy you really like? Like, I hunt and fish a lot with a guy named Denny Denham, one of my closest friends. And while he'll dump all over me, and you know how that is and stuff, I trust Denny with my life. So I might look into the camera and pretend I'm talking to Denny. Depending on what the story is, I might pick my mother. But I'm talking not to a camera, but to one person. Same with a microphone.
I love that.
So that's my tip that I give everybody, and most ignore it.
And that might lower your any kind of stage fright. But when you're driving, so let's say you're going to do a feature story.
Yep.
And you don't know much about the person. How do you kind of format your questions so that you can draw the story out in a way that will work? I try to give everybody a chance to tell their story, but I also tried to not get into a story that I didn't know much about. I tried to, a good story tells itself, get out of the way. So, if you can find that good story, and my show's in reruns now, and so I get to watch them a little bit more objectively, and I understand some of the problems I had. But like yesterday, there was a thing about the Santas at Sunday River, and you dress up like Santa, you get to ski free for a day, which is $75. You have to bring $10 worth of canned goods. Yeah. So, okay, get a Santa suit, and stop at the store on the way up, right? But these pictures go all over the world of Santa Clauses, be 150 of them maybe. They all make one run, and the photographers are all out there shooting. And
So we decided to do that for a show, probably because of the way the calendar was working. We got to get something done. Skiing Santa's at Sunday River on Saturday or Sunday. Let's go up. And we got back, and I'm looking at the story. I'm thinking, this sucks. This has been done every year for 22 years, and here I am. Why did I bite on this? And so then I decided to write a poem to the tune of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and it was really funny. They skied and they soared and they laughed and they panted and they jumped and they stopped, and this one face planted, boom, and it really worked. And I'm so proud of that story, because this story's been done 25 times, but I did it differently. And not all of my stories were great, but you got to look for an angle. You got to look for a good story. For your people out there, a guy named Steve Thaxton was the general manager who came up with the concept. And he said, you ought to have an outline. So the first segment is action adventure. Get out and do something. Get moving, speed, whatever, skiing, fishing, hunting, whatever, biking, running, sailing, canoeing, anything in Maine, perfect show for this. So the first segment was to get them, to open their eyes. But it's hard to do a story with action in it that's as long as a story that's, say, an interview. So the first segment was often shorter. The show ran 22:40 plus commercials for a half hour. And so
22 minutes, 40 seconds plus commercials.
Yeah. And so that first piece might be 3:15, 3:30. So, but the interview might be 5.5.
But it sets the tone.
Yeah. And then the interview would be with an interesting Mainer. And we tried to interview everybody. And we were not, I'm shocked today about how journalists take sides. Like I've talked about Muskie and Smith, and I haven't talked about Bill Cohen, who was a Republican.
Right.
Muskie and George Mitchell were Democrats.
Right.
Angus is an independent who caucuses with Democrats. Susan Collins, I haven't talked to. Everybody got a chance to tell their story on my show. And I chose them for interviews based on where they were in, if you got to Congress, you got on my show.
So once you're doing features and you're dealing with your producer and you are saying, or they're saying, Bill, Thursday or for this coming Saturday's Bill Green, Maine, I want you to do this. Or was it you saying, producer, I want to go do dog sledding in Mahoosic?
Yeah.
Because who I'm thinking of that did their own, I think they did their own, Bob Elliott.
Oh, yeah.
He was no man's copy. So to the original question.
Yeah.
Were you coming up with a story ideas?
Yeah, stay ahead of the effing producers. They're wonderful people. No one ever gives you a good story. We have one person who's well-known in Maine media, worked in the newsroom. When she didn't want to do a story, she'd say, Bill, do you want to do this story? I think, wow, that story's really terrible. You hate me, but maybe it would be better for her than it was for me. You know what I mean? You got to do your own thing. And because of Bud, I knew that my specialty became recreational sports. And we couldn't do kill shots on the 6 o'clock news, right? I mean, we could have, but not many people in that audience, 24 to 22, wants to see that deer shake and go down. So I do stories on a hunting camp. That's where L.L. Bean was born. I do stories on, hunts that the animal never gets shot.
Right.
We shot a couple of birds maybe, but, fishing was okay. You can do that on the 6 o'clock news, but, my outdoor reporting was very soft, very for your mother-in-law. She didn't want to see a lot of the things that you see in sports afield or something, right. Or, you know what I mean? So
maybe more about the people behind it than the actual.
Absolutely. I mean, sporting camps are lifestyle jobs, and you get up to a sporting camp and talk to anybody who's running one. Maine guides. I'm a registered guide, in that I've passed the test.
Yeah.
I've never guided a single person.
That was one of my questions I had for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to have some credibility, so I went and took the test. During the 2004 American League playoffs, Red Sox and Yankees, and the Red Sox are coming, I'm up at camp with a beer can on a TV antenna, trying to watch the games. I missed that whole series. So I remember when I got my guide's license.
Was this during that time?
Yeah, that was the week that I went to guide camp to learn how to pass the test.
Yeah.
And then I passed the test, and it never guided.
So I'm guessing you went to John Rogers School.
I did.
You did, yeah. Somebody up to camp would describe his place because it's
Lincoln.
actually
up in Lincoln.
Yeah, it's a full
immersion. Yeah,
full immersion.
Yeah,
we've had John Rogers on the podcast. He's a great guy. He's actually coming up in another episode soon.
So anyway, finally, I'm 70. I want my free license. I got to get fingerprinted to get a guide's license.
I know.
But wait a minute.
Yeah.
Our main guide's so horrible that we have to fingerprint everybody and check their backgrounds to catch the 1 or 2 people who've become a felon.
So one of the things I've taken away from just being around you, Bill, is that you were tremendously successful in your career. No one would question Bill Green as a household name, but you don't attribute your success in front of the camera. I think you attribute it to your work ethic.
Exactly. Yeah. I worked hard. They asked me at my retirement show, what do you think? I'll tell you, I worked hard. I did. I mean, I can go to Falmouth and do a story, or I can go to Fort Kent and do a story. Well, Fort Kent's 6 hours, but it's a better story. We're going, and you try to you stay overnight at what's the name of the hotel up Northern Door Inn, you go down to the Swamp Buck and have dinner, and it's fun, but my family's home.
Right.
And so on the way back, we're going to stop in Millinocket and do something. And then we'll come home. We got 2 stories done. It was 2 days of work, but where everybody else worked 8 to 5, I left at 6 in the morning to have enough light to shoot in the Fort Kent in winter. And then, and I'm not complaining a bit. I'm very lucky, and I'm also on salary, so they don't have to worry about overtime. And they assigned a photographer to me. I think eventually they signed just one. And I don't know how Kirk got paid. That was his problem. I think he ended up on salary too.
Yeah.
And he took ownership of the show. A guy named Kirk Craddy. I had a number of really fine photographers, but the last 7 years I worked with one guy. But so it's wear and tear in the family. But on the other hand, if your kid's got a game Tuesday night, you'll leave an early Wednesday morning, and you'll be back for the next game Friday night. If it's basketball season, we're not traveling Tuesday night.
But I think it showed in your final product. You wouldn't rush into a recording and get right out. It was like, well, that was an interesting story, but it was quick and short, and I didn't get much out of it. Your stories were you left no stone unturned in a lot. I mean, I've watched a lot of your features that you've done. I've watched your shows on Saturday night and whatnot, and they were just really well.
Well, if you go to Fort Kent, and if you go to Fort Kent to do a sled dog race, it's the Can-Am 250, and it's a 3-day event. It starts Saturday morning, right down Main Street. People on both sides of the road. You know what I mean? All these dogs barking, and they're holding them by the collars, and the dogs want to go. And so you got a big open, and off they go. They let you ride in a sled down Main Street. I don't know what that's so I did it. I don't know why. And then you get down to the end, the guy's trying to win, so he dumps you out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, geez. And off they go. But, they go 2 days. Well, if you're working hourly, and, you can't even get to that story hardly, but we're up there overnight, and we're staying getting the finish.
Right.
And that finish could be Sunday night at midnight.
Yeah.
And I remember one time it was so cold up there, and we were chasing these guys around, and I'm not ashamed of it. We got the finish line was somewhere out on a toll road. I don't know why. Because normally they finish at the ski area. And I said to Kirk, I'm not getting out of the car. You got to go get this shot. So the guy came, and Kirk, it's 20, 25 below, gives a shot. And I came out and held the mic for the guy for like 1 minute. Hey, great job. Congratulations. And the guy goes, I'm pretty cold. I want to go home. But, 2.5 days to get 4 minutes.
Right.
So my story should be better than the hourly employee who doesn't know anything about that,
Well, thank you for sharing that. That was a great answer to the question I had, because I think it really showed.
There's an ad on the radio, and I don't know who the ad is for, but it says, have you ever heard anybody who attributed their success to sitting around not doing nothing? And no.
Yeah.
And I don't have any particular talent. I think down through the years, I learned some tricks. I think I've learned to be a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
But, like Bud could outright me. Bob Elliott, who was a network correspondent, his mother died, and he said, "The heck," and I can even tell you the story. He was in Nicaragua for the war down there, and he got into a situation that was
The Sandinistas and the Contras.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Back in '87 or something, and he got into a spot that he could have died, and he came home. And he's sitting down to open a stack of mail. Mail was something that used to come to your house, and you'd read it. And the phone rings, and Ricky Nelson's plane had just crashed, and Ricky Nelson was dead. Get up and go. And he said, to heck with this. I'm going to go home and spend some time with my father before he dies. And, he had maybe 10 years. I don't know. But he hung out with his dad and came home to Maine and did stories and created characters. And he was a magnificent teller. storyteller. By far the best on Maine television ever.
Hilarious.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
What a tough act to follow. But just for the audience, Bob Elliott would do these. It was more just human interest stories.
Yep.
Why people have their Christmas trees and their decorations up in downtown Portland in July and
He'd
August.
go around like March 1st, and if you had he'd knock on your door
Yeah.
and say, "We're with the Christmas tree patrol. You want us to take your decorations down?" And one lady answered the door. She said, "Oh no, I was afraid you'd come."
Yeah.
Just great stuff. And what was the other one I was looking at the other day? Just wonderful. Oh, I know what it was. He kind of felt he had the blues. Maine needs its own Christmas song. So we had a guy write it over the weekend, and I can sing the Maine Christmas song for you right now. There's still meaning in the magic of Christmas. And it did well.
Yeah.
So
Was there a gal singing it as well?
Yeah, there's a country singer, Belinda Liberty.
Yeah, but if you've been around Maine for the
Belinda
last
Liberty,
30 years, you heard the song and you knew Bob Elliott.
Oh yeah,
and he was a coworker with you.
Oh yeah, and a friend. You know what? I'm so proud Bob was my friend.
What happened to Bob?
He had a heart ailment.
Yeah.
The big story was he covered an election one night. I think it was Angus getting elected governor, so we're into the 90s now. And you used to have to cut a package for the morning news. And so he drank a beer. He had a beer up on the riser. And he wasn't a drunk or anything like that, but he was a guy that could drink a beer. I don't like to drink a beer. I like to drink 10 beers.
Right.
And so I try not to. But, as a young man, I like to drink 15 beers.
Yeah.
But Bob, just have a beer. I'd rather have a Diet Coke. But anyway, so he's having a beer. He's going to hold it down when they shoot his stand-up. The Press Herald took his picture. All right. Now, that's Tuesday night. They also own Channel 13. Gigantic. On Sunday, they put his picture on the paper standing there holding a beer. And they didn't say anything about it. Bob Elliott wraps up his news, but there he is holding a beer. And so the boss calls him in, and he says, "I'm sorry." And the boss says, "Don't do it again." And then I think there was a lot of complaining. If that happened to me, I would have been fired. If that happened to me, I would have been fired.
Right.
So Bob, so now the big boys come down from the fourth floor, and Bob said, "Look, I talked about it with the news director. We've settled the matter. I'm really sorry about what I did." And they said, "Well, we're going to have to suspend you." And he said, "You're going to have to talk to my agent." And then the lawyers got involved. And
that was the end of Bob Elliott.
He went to Channel 8 for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then, but he had a heart condition. We'd play men's league basketball.
Yeah, he was a basketball player from Portland.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He played at Middlebury.
Right.
He played in college.
Talented.
Yeah, good player. Yeah, a very fine high school player, good Division III player. He wasn't Cooper Flagg, but he was a good player and a gamer, And at least twice that I can remember, we played a men's league team against like a local law firm, and Bob's got an irregular heartbeat. He finishes the game, then goes to the hospital, and that was part of it. He knew he was going to live a short life, and he was biking one day, and he got off his bike, apparently having a heart attack, sat against a tree at Fort Williams, and somebody found him deceased.
Right.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I was doing a story out of Rockland on a windjammer. My wife called me, bag phone, early days of phones. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, and I had it in my duffel, but I got to the phone, and Pam said, Bob Elliott died. And I was looking up at a seagull on a beautiful sunny day, and I expected the sky to turn black and that seagull to drop out of the sky, and it just went across the sky, and I thought, can't be, this death has to be more than that. But I guess life goes on.
Yeah.
But great guy. But taught me something too. You said hard act to follow. I didn't follow him. I was 2 or 3 years later doing a different thing. But be yourself. You can't out Bill Green, but you can. You can do this podcast a heck of a lot better than I can. And Bob was Bob. I couldn't do what Bob could, but Bob was irreverent. Bob would go up, knock on somebody's door and say, "You want us to take your Christmas deck?" I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I had to do my own thing with my style.
Well, he was an entertainer, and I think, not to compare you and I, but our job is to really bring out the story about the other person,
right.
The person on the other side of the camera, the other person on the other side of the table. And there's some challenges with that, but Bob had to entertain, and that's a high act.
Well, he went into character. He had a sleuth there, Sam Spade or something. Whoever, he'd do him in black and white, sepia tone. He has a news story.
I know.
Right? Just brilliant. I think.
Yeah. Bill, I think we're at a good point to take a quick break. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely.
And we'll come back after a few minutes.
More tea.
In this Flyline flashback, we revisit the era when Maine Outdoors found its way into the living rooms across the state. Thanks to one man who became a companion to everyone who loved the woods and waters, Bud Levitt. Long before he stepped in front of the camera, Bud was already a household name through the Bangor Daily News, where he served as executive sports editor and a longtime outdoor columnist. For decades, he wrote about everything from salmon runs on the Penobscot to the fortunes and follies he encountered in the Maine woods. When Maine's first television station went on air in 1953, the producers asked Levitt to bring his stories to television. The Bud Levitt Show became his new home, a natural shift from column to camera. The format wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. It was just Bud, a guest or two, and the shared language of fishing lines, canoe strokes, and heartfelt stories that every Mainer understood. Over the years, his episodes wandered through the heart of Maine's outdoor heritage. Salmon trips filmed on familiar pools, conversations with sporting camp owners, reflections on conservation, and quiet reminders of the traditions that shaped life in the North Woods. Beneath Bud's relaxed style, a deeper story was unfolding. Maine's landscape was changing, logging practices were shifting, access to private land was evolving, and conservation debates were starting to echo across the state. Through it all, Bud's writing and broadcasting became a steady guide, a neighborly voice reminding viewers that the outdoors wasn't just a destination, it was part of who they were. Bud Levitt stayed on the air until 1992, making his program one of the longest-running outdoor shows in the region. When he passed away in 1994, Mainers didn't just remember Bud as a writer or broadcaster, they remembered the feeling he created, the sense that Maine's great outdoors didn't end at the tree line. It lived right there in the living room beside you. And now, back to the second half of this episode. Welcome back from the break, Bill. I got so much to talk about. One of the things that I wanted to touch back on is our mutual friend, Bill Pierce.
And we were doing so well till now.
Yeah.
The FCC wasn't going to get involved. And what about him?
You've done so much with him over the years. I feel like there's a story there.
Well, he's good copy. Billy, first of all, he knows what a story is. He's smart. He's funny. And he's doing interesting things. Take the museum there in Oquassic. I don't know the name of it.
The
Rangeley Lakes Outdoor Sporting Museum. It's one of the best museums I've ever been to. I've been to the Louvre. You do the 3-minute Louvre, with Mona Lisa and David and
right.
But you up there you get a painting of Eisenhower painted by his guide.
Yeah.
Up there. I mean, I think that museum is really just a great museum. And it's a little thing. It's doable in 2 hours, maybe one. If You know what I mean? But there's an example. But he was running programs for kids. I did a story with him one time. And you get there, and we were talking off mic, I think, about, have you ever had a story canceled? It would never be canceled with Billy because he knows you're coming, and he's going to get the elements to the story in order so that you can do the story. Yeah. It's always a pleasure to work with him. He's a smart guy, and he's a fun guy, and he's done some interesting things.
And he's done a lot for the state of Maine. He's been an ambassador. I know he won the L.L. Bean Outdoor Hero Award back in the day. And I can't remember if you covered that story or not. I remember the media being there and him being well-deserving of it. But one of the things that I also observed, Bill, is just this winter, we do cross paths occasionally, and we crossed paths this winter at the Miramichi Salmon Association banquet where you were the MC.
Yep.
And before the banquet started, there's always the cocktail hour. And you and Denny, your good fishing and hunting buddy, were there. And we were out in the lobby, if you will. And I was had just finished up talking with you and Denny about things. And this woman is kind of casually walking around. And she's kind of standing in our proximity. And you look at her and she looks at you and you said, "Hi, my name's Bill Green." And she goes, "I know." And one of the things that I've always observed about your demeanor and your approach with people is that you speak to the quietest person in the room. You treat everyone with respect. The takeaway was what a nice guy that Bill Green is. You don't have to work at it.
You know what? I'm a nice guy. I came from that, blue collar background or whatever. Meeting Bud Levitt or something was a big deal to me. So if I can shake a kid's hand and say hello, well, I mean, I got nothing better to do.
Right.
I'm there for a banquet. I'm supposed to be talking to people anyway.
Yeah.
I don't remember that incident.
No.
It made it sound like I was hitting on this woman in the lobby.
No,
I'm kidding.
not
But
at all.
no, hi, how are you? My name's Bill Green.
But
And I say that not because I think Bill Green's a big name or anything. I say that because sometimes one of my least favorite things, please don't ever, you listeners, don't come up to somebody and say, do you remember me? Because the answer really is no, because I didn't call you by name. I go up to Bill Cohen, who I've known since childhood. He was a Secretary of Defense and a U.S. Senator for many years. And when I see Bill Cohen, I say, Bill Green from News Center, how are you? And he says, Bill, I know who you are. But there's not that uncomfortable, do you remember me?
Right.
I mean, I didn't say that to Denny when I came to his house or, hi, Denny, do you remember me? I mean, you know what I mean? So,
I do.
So I just try to include everybody. And a lot of times you meet some nice people that way.
Yeah, but it also comes across as being unpretentious and
I'm unpretentious. I mean, I don't think I was great. I just think I worked hard. I had a great opportunity in that show, which was Bill Green's Maine, which we did for 20 years. And we exceeded their expectations. But, it wasn't because I was pretty or because I, was particularly talented. I just worked hard with another guy. I think I knew and you know what? I think I knew Maine. And so it gave me an advantage. I knew how to say some of the words. I knew where some of the interesting people were. When I started in 1975, if you didn't speak with an English accent and had gone to an Ivy League school, I didn't want to interview you for about 2 weeks. And then you get the first guy that makes clam rakes. He's unshaven, this snot hanging out of his face. And you say, how are you, Butchie? How are you, Butchie? I'm good, Bill. How are you? And people come up to you and say, that guy was great.
Oh, yeah.
You learn darn quick. They want to, get a sense of the fabric of the town.
Well, you have that unique DNA growing up in Maine that you could pick up. You also knew what our audience, the Maine audience, would want to hear.
I went after Bud's audience. And I didn't go after Bud's audience, but, Bud did that kind of thing. And I tried to do the same thing. It's, share the air with the common guy. And I don't know, they're good people. And, and Maine's a big, small town. And, don't talk badly about anybody because you're probably talking to their cousin. And everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. And, it's 1 or 2 or 3 degrees of separation here. And so you can get your audience to follow you pretty easily.
Well, you've done a great job through Bill Green, Maine, to highlight guides and outdoorsmen, people that have a craft through your programs that you did. I'd like to just you and I reflect on a few of the stories because some of them are really unique.
All right.
And I also want to just say which ones did you like or which ones really stuck in your mind. One for me, if you don't mind me kicking off, you did a story on Macaulay Lord, who was the head of fly fishing instruction at LL Bean.
Yeah.
Nice guy, intellectual.
And the other side of the thing I just said, now a guy like Macaulay Lord, it's going to be hard for him to get on my show because he's too sophisticated, except
for the fact that when he goes out on a river, tell me about what happened when you went out.
He does his fly fishing schools and camps and lessons. He goes out on the river and he pretends, well, what would the fish like? And he reaches down, picks up a bug and eats it. That's tasty. Let's try one of those. And, so now it's a real fisherman talking to real fishermen, but it's also something for your mother-in-law. Oh, he's eating bugs.
Yes. Oh, it was very entertaining.
And he said something to the effect that the key isn't knowing which bug to eat, it's knowing which ones not to eat.
Yeah.
And there were 3, I guess, that he knew enough not to eat. But I mean, how cool is that? That's a give me TV. How was the writing on that story? Nobody knows.
No.
Because Macaulay Lord was eating bugs.
Yeah.
And he is a charming guy.
Yeah.
And we were, I don't even know what those floating inner tubes are called.
Float tubes.
Yeah. Floating around. That was pretty cool.
On the Androscoggin River.
So again, though, I didn't do that story. That was just a story that I went out and collected. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that was a story that your producer didn't send you out on, or he did? Yeah,
no, I was, the last 20 years, somebody might have suggested a story.
Yeah.
But the last 20 years, I was picking the story.
You were.
Sure.
So would you get, as an example, you had a story you did with Joe Sullivan, who was a guy that had lost both of his arms in an accident, and he was really into ice fishing and also a sawyer. He was into logging. How did a story like that come to you? Probably
somebody told me about him.
Right.
I think one of the guys that was in that story probably called me.
Yeah.
And, it was an ice fishing story. and the guy's got no hands. And I had another one with a guy that was, I believe, in the first wave in Omaha Beach. And he was old, of course, and I couldn't believe what he said about it, but it was okay because he was there. But, he's talking about the effing lead flying and, oh my God, and we're beeping. But I tried not to beep. I tried to just take the words out,
Yes.
the swearing that you couldn't have on, but I left a lot of it in.
Yeah.
Because Pat Callahan always joked, and I don't know who said it first. Pat Callahan was an anchor I worked with. We're writing the first draft of history. Here's a guy that was on Omaha Beach, and not like my dad, 6 weeks too late, He was there.
Yeah.
And this is his remembrance. We have an obligation to record that, and in as much as you can, a true fashion, not unedited, because you got to edit, but don't have him say what you want him to say.
No.
Let him say what he had to say. And that's a valuable piece of history 50 years from now for someone to see. I don't remember the guy's name. I remember him.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? That's, let him speak his piece.
Yeah. Did you do much on Maine sporting camps or?
Yeah, I tried to.
Yeah.
Name them, the Bradford
Weatherby's and
yeah.
You really
Lean's
have
Lodge and
say it again.
Lean's Lodge.
Lean's Lodge.
Yeah,
Where
I knew
was that one?
Stan Lean. It was down by East Grand Lake.
Right.
And down on Grand Lake Stream.
Yeah.
And guy named Stan Lean.
I've heard the name, and
he was a Bangor guy. It wasn't really probably that great among the great sportsmen, but it was that great among the Bangor area, and it was a fine camp, and it was right near Weatherby's.
It must be a privilege too, because I'm sure when you go to a place like that, they somewhat roll the red carpet out for you.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to take advantage, but say we're going to a camp, we'll usually go in at, try to get there for a half day of shooting, 1 or 2 o'clock, and we'd stay overnight. We wouldn't pay for that. And that was always something that they criticized a lot of outdoor reporters for. But I was really there working. We'd pay $50. Isn't that weird? We'd give them $50 to pay for any food we ate.
Sure.
But the cost of the meal was probably greater than that.
Right.
And then we tipped whoever cleaned the camp. I always took a sleeping bag and put it out on top of the bunk.
Yeah.
So I wasn't using their bedding. I don't know if they had to change the sheets or not.
Right.
But then we'd leave, 10 or $20 there, depending upon what we thought. And then we'd be up at sunrise,
right.
Shooting breakfast, shooting morning, and then get out.
Right.
So it looks like you were there 2 days. You were there, maybe from, if it's summertime, 3 to 8. Well, and then you stayed there. And, we do a thing about dinner, fireplaces.
Oh, yeah.
So we're doing a thing on a winter hike on the Appalachian Trail one time. And the idea was we were going to build a snow cave.
Ice cave, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we later did that story.
Yeah.
All right. So it's going to be 28 in the ice cave. Well, it was so dry, the snow wouldn't set up. We had to stay in tents. It's 20 below in the tent. So that's 48 degrees, right? I mean, that's not, And so we're building a fire. We're going to stay next to the fire as long as we can, and then jump in our sleeping bags and as long as we can, And we're looking at the fire, and I said, a fire at night is a great shot on TV. It just works. Next time you watch a TV, you see a fire.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy says, that's interesting because now we sit around staring at TV, which is radiation. Before that, we sat around staring at fire. So it's double radiation.
Yes.
So we had a lot of fun with this concept, this stupid concept of double radiation working. And but another example of that was the coldest spot in Maine is the Big Black River. And they put a portable remote weather station there. It's due west of Caribou, 75 miles. And you go up to Canada and come through one of those private crossings, which is cool. Go down a lumber road.
So you went there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
that's the key. It's Tuesday. We have a new record low temperature in Maine. It's 50 below. Oh, I can go tomorrow. So, no, I think we found out about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I can't go tomorrow. I can go Thursday. And I'll have it for the Green Outdoors, which was a 2-minute feature I did on Monday night. So Thursday we go up there. It's 28 degrees. All right. Well, the difference between 50 below and 28
It's
degrees
78
is the
degrees.
difference between 23 and 100.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's still cold.
Yeah.
Everything's frozen. There's a fox eating a dead moose. I mean, we had some good shots and stuff. Everybody's saying, "Oh, I can't believe you went there." Well, it's 28 degrees. Whatever it was.
Oh, it's almost 28 degrees here.
Yeah, there. You know what I mean? But they all thought I was a hero for going up to the big black where it was 50 below.
Yeah.
But by the time I got there, it was 28 above, I think.
Is there any one story that you got a story you didn't expect?
Yeah, all the time. You've got to be good enough to recognize this is better than what I came for.
Can you think of an example?
We did a story that I really like that I came up with, which is better than, where's the first place in Maine to greet the rising sun?
Yeah, Eastport.
And, well,
Oh, no, it's Cadillac Mountain.
Well, the scientists at the University of Maine, where I got a 2.19,
Don't brag, Bill.
depends on the time of the year. I'm looking for the guy with a 2.18. I'm going to just ride him. But, so we put a guy on top of Mount Katahdin, which had to be a warden, a park ranger, rather. We went to West Quoddy Head because it was the most scenic and was easiest to get to. We put a guy up on top of Mars Hill in a Cadillac.
Cadillac, yeah.
And so then we all reported.
But what time of year?
My birthday, September 2nd. And that was significant.
Coming into the fall.
Yeah, and I think most of the time, and to shoot it for TV, we have to have pictures. So we're down by the famous red and white striped 13 stripes on the West Quoddy Head Lighthouse. So we're down there. The lighthouse is at sea level. Behind it, the road rises up and it goes up into some hills. I think the first place to greet the rising sun most days is somewhere up in those hills.
At Quoddy Head.
Yeah, West Quoddy Head, which is the most eastern point in the contiguous 48 states. But, that day Bar Harbor one, I think, yeah. So, but we were down low. But that's the story that we did. And I said that, but I mean, I thought that was a really fun story that, and when the ranger, he climbed Katahdin in the middle of the night and he's up there, he's an Air Force veteran. And I synchronized my watch. It was 02:47:50, so it was fun.
Yeah. One story that you didn't report on, but I'd like to share, Bill, is I know that through the grapevine, I understand that you were a bone marrow donor.
I actually did report on that. Yeah,
you did report on it.
Yeah,
I didn't catch the story.
So I'm a hero, Mike, and saving lives is just part of what I do.
I love it. And you're humble. Too.
Yeah, a humble guy. So we're going somewhere up north, and Angus King was governor, and he's going to give blood for a bone marrow drive that was being held by the head of the Chamber of Commerce in Auburn. His son needed a bone marrow transplant. And you don't get it from your drive. You don't find your match usually at your drive. You're just building up the bone marrow bank. So we're going to shoot through the State House. You park in a press spot right by the side door. You run in, they're lined up giving blood. And so at my church, they teach us that if you have something that you're good at or you got something like money, you should share it with other people. And I have the gift of health. I'm not, I can't beat anybody up, but I'm durable. I can take a beating, Michael.
I like it.
You can beat on me a long time. I can work 48 hours a week for 47 years, and it didn't kill me, right? So I thought, I should sign up for this. So I filled out the form, and because I think I'm a big shot, I'm thinking I can get right on. They get in the back of the line. I go, I don't have time. I'm not waiting 45 minutes to get blood. I got to get the Cacaggio or something, right?
Yeah.
So I said no. And the guy, the head of the chamber, whose son needed a marrow transplant, said, "Oh, we have to do Bill next because they're taking video to be on TV." And they didn't take mine. They took Angus.
Yeah.
And we went off wherever we went off to do our story. So I almost walked away from it. Immediately, within 4 or 5 days, I got a match. You're a match. And you got to go to Boston, and then you're supposed to think about it for 6
So you did give blood that day?
Oh, I did give blood that day, but I was walking. I was going to walk away.
Right.
And I'm the match.
Right.
And the little girl had leukemia at 5, had cancer at 10. She's lying in the hospital dying.
Sammy
Phipps. And her parents are gathered around. It's Christmas time. Makes me cry.
Yeah.
And the doc walks in and says, "We got a match. Baby." And her mother likes me, I'll tell you. I still get Christmas cards.
I bet you do.
Tickets and lines. But no, it's just like that. And I almost walked away from that, Mike. I'm a smuck, see? But But no, we matched and I went down. They said, you got to wait 6 weeks. I said, I'm going to do this. I don't need to wait 6 weeks.
What was the process?
It was a real operation. They put you on anesthesia. They stick like a knitting needle in your lower back and they puncture your backbone.
Yeah.
But then they move the thing, they farm an area with like 5 things. And then they go to another area, at least at that time. And you feel like a smuck for another reason. The guy that invented that process went into a lab with some dogs and studied for 20 years. And here's me, the smuck, that almost walked away. And my bone marrow happened to match up with Sammy. But anybody would do that. I'm not a hero, but so glad that worked out. And it was a real lesson for me about being humble. The doctor that invented that saved 10,000 people. I don't know, 50,000 people.
Yeah.
And we should all line up and stand in line and give blood and add to that bank. They don't need, it's not as complicated now as it was then. That was 2000, I think.
Right.
But, yeah. No.
Was your recovery? I mean, was it difficult?
It's funny. So, no, I think it was on Saturday or something. We did it at Mass General. And then Sunday, you stay and I'm fine. I go home. And the doctor said, you're going to be tired. Wait a week. And by Tuesday, I got to get in and talk about this. I'm ready to go. So I go in Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm dragging. But I went to work Tuesday. I can't skip Thursday and Friday because I'm tired.
Right.
So it was, I was tired for about a month, and because I didn't obey my doctors.
Yeah, and I mean, I did study science, but I'm not a biochemist. But I can imagine by removing your bone marrow, that's what's producing your blood cells, right? So you were depleted of the thing that kind of gives you the energy and the vitality.
Where were you then?
Yeah. Well, Bill, I mean, you shared some great stories. We talked about our sporting community. We talked about mutual friends that we have. Who's Pam McCormick?
Well, that's my wife, and we couldn't have done it without her. She needs me like a hole in the head. Like when I leave Tuesday and come back Friday, I wouldn't give her notice half the time. I mean, I give her no, honey, I'm a bad planner. And then all of a sudden, hey, I can't be here Wednesday.
Yeah.
She just took it over. She raised our kids. We have 4.5 grandchildren.
Right.
And,
how did you meet?
Blind date. Guy named Joe Dombeck was doing weather at Channel 2. And I met him later on when I got to Channel 2. Yeah. And I moved to Portland. He said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great, but I was running marathons.
Yeah.
My weight was down and I wasn't drinking at all.
Yeah.
And before you swiped left and swiped right, you often went into a dance hall or something, a dance place or a bar, met a girl and asked her out or something. And I said, I have many girls. He said, call my niece. And I thought, there's a good way to lose a friend right there, date his niece. So I didn't. But her grandmother passed away. She saw her Uncle Joe at the wake and, did Bill Green call you? And she said, why would Bill Green call me? And, he said, I think you two ought to get together. So he sent me a card. I knew she was a county girl.
Yep.
I figured she must like basketball.
Yep.
So, and I had free tickets to the Globetrotters.
Oh.
Tex Harrison again, right?
Yeah.
Because when they come by and spin the ball, they leave plenty of tickets. And that's something I don't talk about on TV.
So what
you get free tickets to a lot of stuff.
I bet you do. Now, what year was it that you met Pam?
81.
81.
December of 81.
And then you had a family together. And you guys were
after
living
a brief courtship of 4.5 years, I dragged my feet. We got married on. Have you heard the joke about the woman who wants to divorce her husband? And she says, golf, golf, golf. He doesn't even remember the day we got married. And the guy jumps up and yells, Your Honor, that's a lie. We got married the day Gary Player won the Masters. Right? No, we got married the day Ferdinand won the Kentucky Derby.
There you go.
May 3rd, 1986.
It's easy to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's been by your side this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, she was a professional. She worked for trade associations that were involved with banking.
Yeah.
And, she's well-educated, a great student. She has a master's degree in French.
Yeah.
Which does not come in handy in banking, but the few times that we go to France, it does.
And so she can speak French.
Very well.
Wow.
I guess very classically, they kind of tease her about it a little bit. It's not parochial or colloquial French. It's textbook learned and, too orderly for a lot of French people. But it's charming, and I'll tell you, it helps to have a French speaker with you.
I know that you do need to get going, Bill, but I feel like we could have this conversation go on for hours on end, share stories that you've done and things that I remember about your career. And to that point, I'd say that you've created a legacy not only in the Maine sporting community, but in the Maine entertainment, and the Maine family community. We all know you. We all admire the work that you've done. I don't know anybody that has an ill word to say about Bill. One of the other things that I think is really cool is you have a way of closing out your program. You have a slogan. Can you talk about what that means?
The slogan, and I didn't use it the whole time. I wish I had used it more. I used it at the end. Is hey kids, and then I'd say something. Hey, we're getting a lot of complaints about this, kids. Please don't go bragging just because you're from Maine. And that's little Billy Green, who I didn't have a lot. I go down the park and play. The other guys didn't have a lot either. And but I think we grew up with a little bit of an inferiority complex.
Right.
This isn't Connecticut. This is Maine, and I was at one of my wife's conventions. We're seated with people from Washington, D.C., Chicago, and I don't know where, 3 cities. And, I think it was New York. And, where you from? Maine. The guy goes, oh, Maine, And then we talked about murder rates. And, how many murders in Maine last? Chicago had just passed D.C. as the murder capital of America or something, the other way around. And I said, we'd had record low, 16. Anyway, last month? I said, no, last year.
Yeah.
And then back then we were number 1 in math or something and number 4 in reading. And their states were 46, 48, and 51 because Puerto Rico was included. And, I started lying to them because I was afraid they're going to move to Maine. I just said, I should be celebrating Maine. I shouldn't have a low self-esteem about this. And so I decided, and that really changed what I did because all of my stories were pro-Maine, and stuff like that. I mean, I just enjoyed watching Bud Levitt with my family on Saturday night, and I wanted to provide that outlet for people.
And you did. And you did it well.
Thank you.
And you did it really well. It really means everything, Bill, that you took the time today to sit down with me and share your story because it's a story that's not only in front of the camera, but it's behind the camera. And it means everything to me that you took the opportunity to share it with me.
It was my pleasure,
our audience. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us for this intimate discussion, and thank you for listening to Flyline Podcast. We're proud to be sponsored by Geiger, the world's largest family-owned promotional products distributor based in Lewiston, Maine. Their support helps us share the rich history of Maine's fishing community through the stories that will be cherished for generations. A new Flyline Podcast episode is released every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, so be sure to come back to meet our next famous guest. Until then, this is Michael Jones, and we invite you to visit the blog section of our website to enjoy photos and contributions from our guests and experience all of the episodes at flylinepodcast.com.